If you're going to start a business, you've got to really have a why you want to start the business.
The point is learning, get educated, get the right ideas, have a plan.
So you got to get really clear on why you want to start a business.
Hello and welcome to the Practical Leadership Podcast, where leaders share their tools and practical advice to make you a better leader today. My name is Max Kozlowski. I will be your host, and today we have a very special episode with a very special guest. We are recording live from the TM3 studios in San Antonio, Texas, and my guest today is Tomas Martinez, and he's the owner of Luxury Home Magazine. He is a Maxwell certified coach. He is a mentor. He is an athlete. He's a golfer, my golf buddy.
That's right.
He's been my friend for a long time. He's been my client. He's my peer and just a good friend. And I'm very happy to, have you as a friend and have you here on my podcast, even if we're using your studio.
Hey,
so thank you so much
I'm excited to be here. Yes.
So Tomas, tell me a little bit about what's happening in your world. What's something good, fun, happy that's happened in the last few days or weeks?
Oh, okay. Well, interesting. I guess this would probably be a good way to start. Yesterday, I played golf with my dad.
Nice.
And it wasn't a typical round because my dad is going through chemo at this time, right? So it's in his second battle, right? And so when I went with him on Monday to his treatment, they told him he's going to need to carry around this fanny pack with a little bit of the chemo that he's going to be going through, this particular treatment. And the first thing I asked the doctor is I said, well, can he swing a golf club, with this fanny pack, and we got a big chuckle. And he said, as long as it doesn't hurt. And so, of course, we were sitting there and discussing this whole idea of playing golf with this fanny pack, and we thought it was funny. We were laughing about it. We thought it was a joke. He shows up on Wednesday, which was yesterday, to play, and I looked at this fanny pack, and it's real small, sits on his hip, and I'm just thinking, how do you swing with that? It's got an IV directly ported to his chest in his artery, right? You know what I mean? I'm sitting here thinking to myself, like, how is he gonna swing a golf club? Could I swing a golf club? You know what I mean? If I was in that position. We go to the first hole, Max. He shoots a birdie on the first hole.
Nice.
Second hole, birdie. He's never started birdie on this course. We're at TPC Canyons. The next hole, par. The next hole, almost a hole in one.
Wow.
He almost hit the ball in. We were both close. Now, we both missed our birdies. But I'm sitting here looking at my dad, and I'm just like, this is he shot a 37, one over par in 9 holes. And then later we played a couple more holes and he ended up getting another birdie. So he had 3 birdies on the day. My dad and I laughed. We were like, when was the last time you had 3 birdies in one round? He goes, it's been a long time. So that's what's been going on. I mean, it was like, we sat there, we laughed about it. I called him this morning. We were laughing about it and joking, because it was so amazing, with everything he's going through right now. He shoots one of his best rounds on the course. So there you go.
Well, I appreciate that. And there was something I was going to say in my intro, and I actually forgot to say it, but, you just kind of proved it right here, right now. You are one of the most positive, upbeat, kind of mentally sound people that I know, and it's contagious.
Thank you.
And I appreciate it, and it's just a great example of that, right? You could be dwelling it, you could be suffering through it, you could be having pity for your father, like it could be all these different negative things, but instead you're like embracing it, looking at the positive, and making the most out of it, playing golf, enjoying him, and making birdies.
Making birdies. Yeah, I mean, the one prayer that I had is like, God, just let him be able to do the things that he loves, right? Just if he can swing a club and he can play pickleball, my dad's happy. Like, everything's good, and it worked out. So I'm looking forward to playing with him probably tomorrow. So
that is excellent. Very, very happy to hear that. So let's shift gears a little bit. And, the podcast, Practical Leadership. Yeah. And the question that I like to ask is, when did you first become aware of the idea or the concept of leadership?
Leadership? Yeah. I guess at high school level, playing varsity basketball, right? There were some opportunities for leadership there. because you were seen as the point guard. I had to lead the team. And junior year, I was starting on varsity, and my senior year again. So I think that was kind of the beginning in sports. You know, you kind of see your role as a leader. I didn't really, you don't really fully understand the aspect of it until I think later in college. I remember reading a book called The 21 Indispensable Qualities of a Leader. And that was one of my first John Maxwell books. And I remember that's when I got this itch to try to understand leadership, to really understand it. I was a teacher at the time. I was coming out of college, and I was teaching early education. And that was when I started going down the road to try to fully understand it and see my role in that and as a leader.
Yeah. So what did you learn? Right? I mean, so I'm sure things have evolved quite a bit since then. But what were some of your early lessons in leadership versus what you're seeing now as an entrepreneur and, as a family man and helping other people and coaching them?
Yeah.
How has it changed?
Well, I think at the high school level, I think there was this, this modeling aspect of leadership, right? There was a modeling aspect where if you wanted people to kind of follow along with what you're doing, you had to model it. You couldn't just be like, pass more, play more better defense. There was a modeling aspect of like, you actually had to do that which you were trying to get other people to do. So moving from, high school sports, right, in this idea of modeling, I realized I get into teaching and my kids didn't like to read. And I could see it. I mean, it was obvious. They didn't like to read. They didn't want to have a book. They didn't want to go to the library. I was like, how am I going to fix this? I realized I had to model. And so I had to model for them, what does a love for reading look like? I had to have a book in my hand. I had to start reading. And so I started reading. At that point, my wife, she would always joke. She's like, you got all these books. Are you reading? I was like, I'm reading them. I want my kids to see me reading. And then I found books that they liked. And so I would model that and I would read the books to my kids, to my students. And then it started to rub off on them. And I started to see them get this love for reading. And then you move into Luxury Home Magazine. That modeling aspects, obviously it evolves. You have employees. You want to model, leadership of like, hey, it's not just do as I say, it's do as I did, do as I'm doing, because you want them to understand that I'm doing the same thing you're doing. I'm not asking you to do something that I haven't done, right? But then that evolves to not just modeling. It's like now you've got to cast vision. Now you've got to start to cast, hey, where are we going? And so those were some of the ways that I had to start growing big time because I didn't have that, in high school. What was my vision? Win this game. You know what I mean? Become a good reader.
When life was simple.
Yeah, that was simple. It was a simple time at that point.
So I want to go back to this because you're not necessarily a reader. Then you realize that, hey, I've got to model this. And somehow you find a way to like it. You find a way to start to like reading. Heck, you were reading books that you thought your kids would like.
Yeah.
And knowing you probably like them.
Yeah.
Is there like a mental trick? Is there a way that you make it such that you actually like it and enjoy it?
I wouldn't say it's there anything mental or any kind of trick. I saw that if I wasn't going to bridge the gap, who was? Right? If I wasn't going to build a love for reading in my students, who's going to do it? Obviously, at that particular point, their parents weren't able to do it because they would have had it, right? And I had a few that had that. But a love for reading, I just felt like I had to bridge that gap, and I knew that there wasn't going to be anything magical about it. I just had to fall in love with reading, and that's what I did.
And there's still that little magic piece that I'm missing.
Yeah.
It reminds me of a Mike Tyson quote. I don't quote him that often.
Yeah.
I think I only have 2 of his. But he said that, he didn't like to train for fights, but he made himself feel like he loved to train for fights. That was the key to his success, right? Like tricking his mind into thinking that he loved it.
Yeah, interesting.
I haven't figured that out yet either.
Yeah.
Right? How do you actually trick yourself to it? I think there's some elements, right? Like focusing on the feelings of doing what you want to do and having a vision of the accomplishment and looking at the positive things. But I don't think there's just like one little switch.
No, and going off of that idea, right? Like this idea of basically enjoying the process, right? Like Mike is basically talking about it's the process itself, and I don't like understanding, like enjoying the process. I didn't learn until probably, I'd say in my workout journey, 2016 is when I started realizing that I thought success was a destination, right? Like when I get here, yay, like that's it. You know what I mean? But I've realized that, it's not, success is not a here, it's not a there. Success is found along the process. It's found along the way as you're moving to wherever you're trying to go. And I see what he's talking about there is that, are there going to be days where you have to go, I don't want to do this, but I know that this is going to be the best interest for my kids. When I was teaching, 100%. Or your employees, right? So, I totally get what he's talking about there. It's trusting the process, as Tony, my boxing instructor, would say, is you got to trust the process.
Yeah. And I think that's absolutely right. And I see that in business all the time where we're looking at the outcome, and it's not just the outcome, it's the progress and it's the learning and it's the learning curve.
Yeah.
And there's so many skills that need to get developed. Not everything is just knowledge.
Yeah.
Right. So you're saying, yes, the knowledge, yes, the skill, yes, enjoy the process.
Yeah.
The one place where I can refer to that really well outside of business is golf, right?
Yeah.
Like I love hitting golf balls. I love being at the driving range, right? And the process of that. And the question is, how do you continue to move that into other areas of your life that you can love the process everywhere to help you to continue to grow. So let's talk about things that you never love. Like, how do you deal with something that, it's like, dude, I just don't love this, has to get done. Somebody has to do it. What has been your approach to that?
The stuff that I don't like? Like the financial aspect of, I just had this huge meeting with a great EO buddy of mine, Aaron Castro. So Aaron, if you're listening, thank you for that mini MBA teaching of really understanding, my financials from looking at your business, your P&L. I've never been a lover of that, right? And there was a moment today with my financial advisor. I was meeting with my financial advisor, and there's a moment where I sat there and I was just like, okay, if I don't figure out how to really love that, then I won't be able to retire with the way that I really want to live in the future. Right? Like figuring out how to truly love that aspect of the finances and where every dollar is going and how every dollar is spent, that actually will lead me to the bigger vision of me retiring and being able to do whatever my wife and I want to do. Right? So it's figuring out the motivation. It's now after that conversation, it's like I'm motivated to really love and dig in to that financial QuickBooks P&L piece so that I can have what we want in the future. And you're going to have to tie those things together, whatever that may be. For instance, the getting healthy. Like I realized in 2016, I got to get healthy. I have to change. And it was understanding that if I wanted to meet my granddaughter, right? My son's, he's 14, right? He's not having any kids anytime soon, but when he does, he's going to have a little girl. But when my granddaughter's born, I want to meet her and I want to be alive to meet her. But not only meet her, I want to play, I want to run around, I want to be able to do everything that she's doing. And so I was able to connect that future ideal to something that I wasn't really enjoying, which was working out. And if business owners can do that, if they can find a way to tie what they don't like to something in the future, it can pull them into really grabbing a hold of it and making it something that maybe they don't love, but they know that it's going to lead them to a better place.
It's really wonderful advice. I really appreciate it. And you really have modeled loving things, right? Like, you love working out now. You love doing your triathlons and marathons and half marathons, and like you work out, and now it's just become part of your identity. And you've done that in a few different areas. In business, sometimes you have the opportunity to say, hey, I can hire someone that's good at that, and I'll just pass that on. But also recognizing what is going to be critical to you, that there's just not going around it. Yeah. There's no fear in you, right? Or apparently doesn't seem to be. You're not fearing going into the numbers. You're like, I don't like them, but I'll go in, right? I might not like the working out, but I'm going to go in. What do you think it takes for someone? Because I believe that fear is kind of what gets in a lot of people's way. Yeah. But how do you overcome that? Or was it just not part of who you are? Like, no fear, I'm just going to love numbers now?
No, I definitely, I don't know if it's necessarily a fear, but I think what happens is I think people just, there's like, I'm not good at that. There's almost like this, well, if I'm not good at that, then I probably shouldn't, focus on it. And growing up, one of the things was, like, I want to do what I'm good at. I don't want to do what I'm bad at, right? Like, who wants to do something and suck at it? Nobody does. You know what I mean? But then I started to realize, it's like, okay, well, the Les Brown quote, he talks about, you don't have to be great to get started, but you have to be started to be great. Like, if you don't start doing something, you don't have the potential to get good at it. And everybody who starts something sucks at it. So I look at it not necessarily fear. I look at it as people don't want to look bad. They don't want to have this look of like incompetence, this look of like, well, I don't know what I'm doing. And I remember sitting there with Aaron and we're looking at it and he's explaining and he's asking me questions. And I have that deer in the headlight look at him as we're looking at P&Ls and we're looking at all this stuff. And he goes, I got you. Don't worry. He goes, you're not going to be tested on this. He's like, but you need to know it, right? Like it was like he took away the anxiety of it, of not feeling good about it. You know what I mean? So I think for any business owner, if there's stuff out there that you're not good at, you don't have to be great to get started. Like, just get started and then you can get great at it. And that goes for literally everything in life.
Yeah. And you kind of touched on something, right? You were vulnerable enough to be able to say, I don't know, right? Yeah. Because you're this, big owner of a big company, right? It's growing, you're doing really well, things are going, and you're like, yeah, I don't know about that. Yeah. Right? Now, Aaron is a really good dude and he's really good with finances. So, you don't have to show up to anyone, but you still are like, dude, I don't know. Yep. Right? Versus, oh yeah, I kind of understand it. So there's vulnerability in that. Mm-hmm. Where have you always been like that? Have you always been open, vulnerable, willing to kind of be coached and get helped? Or was there ever a point where you felt that you needed to be, know it all and be it all?
I mean, I think it goes through, I think every business owner goes through stages of like not wanting to be vulnerable and then be vulnerable. I think as you get older, there's a realization that you just don't know everything. There's a realization of like, you're going to need other people to kind of help you along this journey. And if you don't get other people along on the journey, then your process to growth is going to be a lot slower. And so for me, I just realized that the more vulnerable that I've been, the quicker that I've gotten down the road of progress, the quicker that I've gotten down the road to achieving whatever goal that I wanted to get to. So I remember when the thought even came into my mind about triathlons, when the thought came into my mind, I had some friends that had done it, and I just felt like I have to have a coach. Like I don't want to do this without a coach, and I want to go to them and just be like, hey, here's kind of where I'm at. What do you think? You know what I mean? And just being vulnerable to go, hey, what's my next step? I think that there's a point where we all get to when you know that you don't know, you need to be vulnerable enough to say you don't know. And it's okay. And for young people, for Gen Z, for millennials, for all the generations that are coming up behind us, the quicker that you can say you don't know, the quicker it is that you can get closer to the answer if you're willing to ask the question and say you don't know. Because the longer that you sit in like, well, I don't want people to think I'm stupid, the longer you sit in not knowing is the further away you're getting from really growing. Yeah. So,
the crazy part about that is that through our lives, we're actually taught to not be vulnerable. Yeah. Right. We are taught that, we're going to get the grade or the promotion or the girlfriend or the friends, whatever, if we are the man or we are the woman, right? Yeah. Like if we're there, then if you happen to be or go through corporate, even worse, right? You can't show any weakness, right? It all has to be strength, and your livelihood depends on it. Kind of like if we were back in the cave days,
right?
And so we're trained to be the opposite of what is going to help us most. Mm-hmm. So, I love it when you can share with everyone. It's like, hey, look, get the help that you need. Who cares? Just win faster.
Yeah, win faster. And what goes along with this, Max, I think is really important, is for people to understand that you can't be the hero of every story, right? Like if every story you're the hero, and if every story is your wins, people don't win from hearing about your wins, right? People may be a little bit inspired, but people learn more from your losses and where you failed, because they go, well, wow, like he's willing to admit that, number one, but number two, I never thought about it, and I need to fix that too, So I always tell people, like, if you're going to speak in front of people, if you're going to stand on a platform, understand that your hero stories, that's not what's going to win people's hearts. It's your vulnerability and your stories of failure, your stories of loss, your stories of, like, let me just tell you what happened to me and how I blew it. Those win over the long run all the time.
Yeah. Like that relatability, right?
Relatability.
And it's crazy because, again, it's not what we have necessarily been taught. It's the opposite.
Yeah.
And I think something happens at some point because, you don't want to be the whiner. You don't want to be the crybaby. You don't want to be the one that's like dwelling over your losses and all that stuff. But there's like a balance there.
Oh, sure.
And being able to share who you really are and what you're really struggling with. And I think people want to help people that want help.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes we want the people that think that they have it all figured out to fail. Like there's an element of that. I've seen it, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh yeah, you think you know it all? Great. Well, I hope you're proven wrong.
Yeah.
Right. So just kind of like natural human instincts and how many times they're just kind of going against what we've been taught.
Yeah. Yeah.
So on the subject of what we've been taught, so what is something that you think like the people get wrong about leadership, right? Like, hey, there's this myth about leadership. This is what people get taught, or this is what's always discussed. But I found that the opposite is true. Have you identified a few things where you're like,
Well, yeah, I think one is titles, right? There's a myth that if you have the title, you're a leader, right? If you are the person in charge, you're the leader. What I've found is that titles don't make leadership, positions don't make leadership. Leadership is influence, right? And one of the biggest quotes by John Maxwell is this idea that leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And if you can have influence on others, you're a leader. If you can influence others to make a decision, you're a leader. And so I feel like one of the myth can be titles. That could be one myth. I think the other myth is that the leader has to have all the answers, right? Like if you're the leader, well, you gotta know all the answers, and that's a myth. For all the the new leaders coming up, all the new business owners coming up, you don't have to have all the answers. I love this quote by Les Brown's, the how is none of your business, right? Sometimes even we think we have to not only have all the answers, but we have to have all the hows. How are we going to do this? I don't know, right? But the idea is to cast a vision as a leader, and then we work together to figure out the how. We work together to figure out where we want to go and how we want to move forward. So those are some of the big myths, right? Like I think it's the titles, positions. That's not leadership. This idea that you have to know everything. That's not leadership. You just have to be able to influence people in the right way.
I appreciate that, right? So it's taking away all the nonsense and really focusing on the core, which is, are you helping people move in a certain direction, which is like this definition of leadership. I wonder how you lead your clients. How do you lead your, you've got a couple different clients, right? So let's focus on the coaching ones.
Okay.
How do you lead them, right? I mean, you're helping them, but in a way, there's some leadership happening there. I'm curious.
My approach with coaching is a very inquiry based. You know, I like to ask a lot of questions. I like to get my clients thinking about their problem from outside the problem, right? Like, and the only way to do that is, you know, to talk about, you know, when you're in the frame, you can't see the picture, right? When the client is sitting and they're in the midst of the frame and I'm on the outside looking in, the only way for a coaching client to actually see is you've got to get them to ask them questions so that they can start to go, oh, I never thought about it that way. Their perspective starts to shift. So I feel like as far as a leader with coaching, I want to be more of a guide. I want to be more of a person that walks alongside, that asks questions, that gets my clients to a new perspective. And not from my perspective, because that's the one thing about coaching that can be really dangerous is sometimes we can go down this road and we could have this, well, I think they need to go here, but the idea is I feel like I want to lead them in a way where they can see it and see the perspective that they need to see and then make the decision, because then the decision is much stronger. Because as opposed to a consultative coaching of me going, hey, you should probably go do that. It takes away their decision power. And it also, from the result aspect, they can have this feeling of, well, Max, you told me to do this, you know? So I like to lead in a more inquiry-based. I like to ask lots of questions. I like them to get to a point where they step outside the frame and they can look back at their problem in a bigger way, not just sitting inside of that frame going, what the heck do I do next?
Yeah, I appreciate that. So I've heard this term being thrown out a few times where a coach would say, it's like, I know where I want them to go and I'm just going to ask some questions to lead them to figure out the answer that I wanted them to have. Yeah. And I'm like, no, that's not it. If you have a good idea, if you have expertise in an area, then by all means say, hey, I'm not coaching right now as a consultant. This is my message to you, which I've learned to do. But not trying to get someone to have the same conclusion that you have, because then you're missing out on so much. Yeah. Because you don't know what's on their mind. You don't know what they can see, except if there's specific expertise or knowledge where you want to drive them. Right. Yes. So, if you wanted to coach me on my physical fitness and you ask me, well, how many repetitions do you think you should make?
Yeah.
Dude, no, I don't know. Just you tell me. Right.
Yes.
So it's like that fine balance, but not trying to get them to any particular conclusion.
For sure.
Same question, but on a completely different client. Right. So Luxury Home Magazine, you help realtors sell their homes faster for more money through your publication, but you still have to help them.
Yep.
How do you help a realtor versus a coaching client?
You know, I think for a realtor is the biggest way that I can help is help them understand what their marketing does for them, help them see the bigger vision of what a Luxury Home Magazine kind of places for them as a client in the marketplace. It's education. It's a lot of education. I don't think the agents necessarily are like it's not like they don't know marketing, but I think what I can provide is a way for them to understand the value of what Luxury Home Magazine brings for them as a client in the marketplace. And so positioning themselves in the marketplace as a luxury agent, educating them on that. And then the next piece is I like to help my clients with is hey, what's working? What have we seen that has worked for clients? What have we seen that has not worked for clients? And talking through that. And some clients are very open to that. Some clients are like, hey, this is what I have. It's been working. And so I don't like to rock the cart at all. If they're rocking with what they're doing and they're getting results. But if there's agents that are asking, I want to walk them through and look at their ad. Hey, what changes could we make? What ideas could we move forward to help them with? The other piece is education on the market. Is where is the luxury market? So I do a lot of education. I do a luxury market report. I do a lot of classes where I want to step in and, apart from marketing, talk about how can you as an agent get better? How can you grow? Because I'm a big believer that before you can truly win outside, you've got to win on the inside. You've got to win the battle of yourself first. And so with agents that have never had a lot of personal growth or a lot of mindset aspect of teaching, I really want to help in that regard to help them see the bigger picture on why personal growth is so critical. Because if you don't win the game on the inside, it becomes very difficult to win on the outside. Or you could have quick wins on the outside, but then they don't last because you didn't really take care of the inside. So I believe that is a critical piece to the whole puzzle of an agent's success. Is they need to win that game on the inside, and then they need to be educated on what works, what doesn't work, and then what's happening in the market.
I appreciate that perspective, because it would have been so easy to just focus on the platform, right? It's like, oh, well, it's a magazine and it's easy, so many people see it and the most affluent and da-da-da. But you're like, no, it's about educating and helping them make a decision on who they want to be.
Yeah.
Right? So what type of realtor do you want to be? And if you want to play in this market, then here's how you do it, right? And not only, you could put your product in my magazine and you'll sell it, but then what happens with you, right?
Yeah.
How are you keeping up, and how are you growing, and how are you evolving? And it's also very natural to you because you love to teach and you love to help. So I appreciate that. And it kind of really sheds a light on the uniqueness of what you end up offering beyond just like the product, right? Like the magazine. So let me shift gears to something on the more practical side of things, right? On typical EO fashion here, looking for an experience share of an approach, a tool, a system that has helped you lead your team, right? You've got people in Austin, in San Antonio, and you've got to kind of help them figure out what they need to do, what want to do, and be able to accomplish their goals and outcomes. What's something that you'd recommend?
So I definitely recommend the Business Mastery by Tony Robbins. That was a massive opportunity that I got to go to about 2 years ago, and maybe it's a year and a half ago now. I went to Tony Robbins. I've never been to any Tony Robbins event. I haven't been to Unleash the Power. I haven't been to any of his events. In fact, I really wasn't a Tony Robbins fan. I kind of thought he was a little woo-woo and a little out there. But when I saw I Am Not Your Guru, which I highly recommend, I think it's Netflix, right? Isn't that Netflix? That Netflix special on Tony Robbins changed my view of Tony Robbins. I had this view of if he was just kind of like a talking head, and he really wasn't trying to help people. He was trying to make money. When you watch that I Am Not Your Guru, you realize the depth and the intentionality that he pours into his people and the people that go to his events. So here I am, Business Mastery pops up. I've always thought about going, and I buy it. I just, boom, $10,000. I'm in, I buy this program, and I realize it was during the pandemic. So guess what?
Virtual.
It's all virtual. Yeah. And I'm like, oh gosh. I was like, I got it virtual. So I'm sitting in front of my screen in my home office, and I stand-up desk, and the first thing is, if it's Tony Robbins, you're standing, you're out of your chair, you're just rah, 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 rah. You're just dancing. I was like, if my neighbors see this window and they see me dancing in here in front of the screen, you know what I mean? But I will tell you what I brought back from that is he was able to put inside my brain this idea of like, you need a dashboard, you need a game plan, and you need everybody seeing the dashboard. You need everybody in this space and place where they know where they stand, and it's all on one sheet. And I got back, and we had this, we called it the conference notes, and literally every Monday we would copy and paste it to another sheet, another day, and it was this long form of just, it was really nothing. It wasn't, it didn't give us any insight. It was tedious. And I said, how can we get all of this on one page? And Jeffrey and I, shout out to Jeffrey, my guy in Austin, we sat down and we started mapping out this dashboard. And the dashboard literally has everything. It has page counts. It has our renewals. It has phone calls, internet, incoming leads. It literally, on one sheet, I can see everything that is happening for that magazine all on one form. And it's all fillable. There's little, tabs at the bottom. This one sheet helps us run the company so that if something happened to me, my wife could literally pick up and run it from here and with no issues, and know exactly where we stand, know how many pages we have, know how many people that are on the fence about coming in for next issue. Every renewal, like the phone call that I just got just before this podcast, that was a renewal that I had reached out to. All of that is listed in one place on one Google folder. And so that tool alone was an absolute game changer for us. The other big tool is a CRM. If you're a business and you don't have a customer CRM tool, right? This customer relation management tool that you, or client management, whatever. If you don't have that, you are missing a massive opportunity to have all of your data in one place and the ability to reach out at the drop of just a click. You can reach all of your clients. And it's always amazed me of even publishers in our system that don't truly have a solid CRM that they can use. Those are tools that you cannot be without. I just don't think you could be without.
Got it. So it helps you get everybody aligned on the same page. Everybody knows the numbers. Everybody knows their numbers, what they're accountable for, how they get there. And if something is off, you can very quickly course correct. So
100%.
All the different reasons why you need a dashboard. And then on the other hand, the CRM is to make sure that those relationships continue to get built. And that there's nothing falling through the cracks and falling off. And just going back on the subject of Tony Robbins, one of the things that I like about him is that it's not just about him, right? He is bringing together and putting together the group of really capable people with really good concepts and really good ideas and really good knowledge. So it's not like, hey, I'm the guy. It's rather, you're going to meet with all these great people that really know their stuff, and they're going to teach you. And that's how I think it should be, right? And when you think about all the personal development stuff, it's not that he invented it all. It's that he tested a lot and figured out what works, and then he brings it to the people. So, kind of curator of content, and then delivers it in a very powerful way.
Big time.
So that is excellent. So there's so many elements on leadership that are kind of just native to you, I think, that I just don't think that you even like recognize them. But so I gotta prod a little bit, right? So how do you keep your team motivated, engaged, happy, right? Wanting to work for the magazine and bust their butt to do great things? Like what's the secret there?
That's a great question. I think my wife might answer that better than I would. I think, just communicating, like being extremely transparent and communicating with your team. I think that is probably the number one piece that really helps us. Jeffrey's been with me going on 8 years, I think it is. I think it's 7 or 8. Crystal will be, I think it's 3 or 4. It might be 3. One of my last employees was with me almost 10 years. It was 9 years. So we're able to keep are people, which is really, really good. So I would say probably the number one thing is communication, that I pride myself on making sure that everybody is fully involved and understanding where we're at and being very transparent. You know what I mean? Making sure that we're extremely transparent.
And why do they want to stay? Why don't they go?
I mean, that would you'd probably have to ask them. That's a great question. Maybe even ask Soren. That's a great question. You know what I mean? Soren is videotaping this for us. I hope that one of the things is I realize this, and I tell everybody that works for me, and I've even told this to Soren multiple times, right? Is that, look, you're not going to work for me forever. It's just like, right? Like they're not going to work for me forever. But my goal as an employer is to make sure that you're better than when you got here. Like, I really feel strongly about like that, is that I want to put whatever I can pour into you so that when you go to your next job, you're better for it. And a case in point, I'll never forget this. I had a gentleman working for me. I don't know if he'll hear this, but he lives here in San Antonio. And he told me one day, where he was selling for me, and he told me one day, I just had this notion that I had to ask. I said, "Do you like to sell? Do you like selling?" And he goes, "No." And he was one of my sales guys for San Antonio. Okay, he's just like, "No, I don't like to sell." And we were driving back from this huge event in Austin, and I said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "Tell me what you want to do. How can I help you?" I said, "Because I guess it's not selling, right? You don't want to sell, right?" He said, "I really want to be a teacher." And I go, "Really?" I said, "Well," you do know my story, right? I used to be a teacher, right? I said, let's meet up tomorrow and let's talk more." So the next day we get in the office, we start talking. I find out that his dream is that he really wants to be a teacher. And I said, "Have you looked into this?" He goes, "Actually," and he's like, "I got this. If I go do this class, and then I could get my emergency certificate." And he was super excited. And I said, "I tell you what, how about we do this? How about you help me train the next person?" And I said, "You take the time you need, and we'll figure out how to get you ready, train my next guy, and then I'll give you about a month so that we can hire somebody and you could train them. And then you'll have about a month you'll continue working and doing the training and whatnot, but you'll also have time to work on your certificate." And he's like, "Really?" I said, "Absolutely." So he does this. It happens. I hire the new person. He helps me train. He goes off. But here's the funny part of the story. The interesting thing about the story is what happens is he doesn't become a teacher. It doesn't work out. He has to take another job, and he goes to this other company. And while he's there, he's inbound sales. So they're calling inbound, and he's there for a couple months, and they're like, "Hey, you've got all these tools. You've got all these systems. Like, you're really good at this. Like, we need you in outbound sales." And he's like, "I just left. I don't want to sell." You know, they're like, "Well, listen, you're really good at it, and you can help us train and help all this stuff that you've learned, whatever you've learned and however you've learned it, you can help us show this to other people," because he was just following the system that I taught him here. You know, so getting back to your question, why do people stay? I feel strongly like I want to create an environment where I want you to grow, and I want to give you every tool to grow. Like you need it. What do you need? You need another screen for your computer to do the dual screen. Let's get another screen for your computer. You need a keyboard. What do you need? What do you need, Soren? Right? It doesn't, like, I want you to be better when you leave here, so that you're gonna make that whatever employee you go to, they're gonna be like, "Wow, like this guy, like they know their stuff." You know, had another employee, another videographer, same situation. Went up to an amazing Fortune 50 company. Like, I was like, when he told me about it, I was like, "Yeah, you got to take the job. You got to take the job," you know? And he goes to a Fortune 50 company, and he took everything that I was teaching him, and he just took it right over there, what he's doing. So he's better. So I want him to be better, and because I also know they're not going to be here forever.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, it connects so well with everything that you're sharing about you and your story. And I'm just going to highlight a few things, right? So make people better than how they got here.
Yep.
Right? So we're going to help you become better. And I think you then attract the people that want to get better and want to learn. You can onboard them faster and get them to perform faster, but they are happier as well. And then I love the what do you want, right?
Yeah.
Like, what do you want? And recognizing that it's a partnership and that you are helping them get what they want, not just help them get what you want.
Yeah.
And it ultimately becomes a win-win. And curiously enough, you talked a little bit about the sales, not sales guy, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And the importance of recognizing the zone of genius versus your zone of competence. And this guy was like in his zone of competence, but probably not in his zone of genius.
Yeah.
But then you said something there at the end, which I just hope is what happened, right? You said, well, we want you to teach all these other people how you're doing it.
Yeah.
And then maybe that's like the boom, right? Now, you helped him get clear about what he wanted, what he didn't want. And then he was able to speak up in another job and say, no, that's not what I want. But they're like, hey, but you could teach other people how to do it. And then maybe he's like, okay, yeah, I can do that. I can teach. I could teach that. So, maybe not a school teacher, but definitely teaching. And I think that all of that becomes very contagious to everyone around you, because then they know you really care. But not only do you care in your heart, you care with your actions and your behaviors, which is a huge difference, right?
Yeah.
So I love it. How are we doing on time?
We're doing great. Yeah.
We have a little bit more time.
We got a little bit more time. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. We're going to edit that, right?
Oh, yeah. He'll take care of that. Don't worry about that. Yeah.
Okay. Now I have to figure out where to go next, because there's so many different ideas. So, Tomas, what would you tell, the up-and-coming entrepreneur? They want to succeed. They want to do great. They're working hard. They're trying. Things are happening. Things are changing around the world. And they're like, okay, great. If Tomas went from a school teacher to a very successful business owner, a very caring person, I'm kind of starting a business or growing a business. What can I learn from his experience? What would you say are like the top couple of specific lessons that you'd say, hey, listen to this and or do this? Kind of like what you said, go to Business Mastery, which competes with me, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Some ways.
Yeah.
But the point is learning, right? Get educated. Get the right ideas. Have a plan. That sort of a thing. What else? What is something that you tell anyone?
Yeah.
Do this.
Number one, I think if you're gonna start a business, you've got to really have a why you want to start the business. So you got to get really clear on your why, and not so much on the how, right? Because the how will slowly start to develop. My how is different now than it was when I started Luxury Home Magazine. How we do business is essentially it's the same, but it's a little different, So what I would say is get really clear on the why you want to start a business. And I remember I was about, oh goodness, I think we're maybe a year into Luxury Home Magazine. And I was overworked, frustrated, just feeling like I don't know how this is really gonna work, right? Like it was hard in the beginning, and I knew it was gonna be hard, but I didn't know it was gonna be that hard, right? To start something from scratch. And we flew to Chicago. We wanted Enzo to see snow, so we were like, we gotta go to Chicago. So I told my wife, I said, look, I can only be gone for like 3 days. Like I can only go for 3 days. We got to get up there. We got to get back. We're in sales cycle and whatnot. And my brother-in-law, Craig, shout out to Craig. He's a huge reader. He tells me about a book. And this was early on in my journey. And it's called The E-Myth, which I'm sure you're very familiar with, right? Powerful book. So if you're an aspiring business owner, this is the first book I think any aspiring business owner should read. It should be given to every college student. If you, for parents out there, if you've got kids that they're talking about starting a company and they're in college and they want to start, I want to start my own company. I want to start. Give them this book as a Christmas gift, The E-Myth, because what the book did for me is it basically laid out all the ideas of this starting a company and working on the business or working in the business. And it was for the first time that I realized that I had created a job for myself. that I had a job. And it was a very eye-opening scenario, right? Because most people, they don't figure out their why. Like I kind of knew my why a little bit when I was starting. I was like, oh man, this is going to be perfect. This is going to be the luxury resource, and we need to create a resource for luxury agents and builders, and we need this in San Antonio. There's nothing like it. And my why was just like, we've got to give people a vehicle to share all this stuff, right? But I didn't know like the aspect of how do you build that company. And what the E-Myth did is it started showing me how to actually build a company, and you need systems. And so what I would tell people is know your why. And then when you know that why you want to do what you want to do, is then now start read the E-Myth, and then start building the systems so that you don't create a job. And if you have systems, those systems will allow you to make sure that you could hand that off to anybody who stepped into your office. Here's this function that I need you to take over. Here is the task, the job. And that once I got that book in my brain, it was just a matter of like, okay, Christina, let's go. And my wife is systems. I mean, that's her deal. She is all about systems. And so once we were able to get that moving and kind of going down the right way, the company just started building and growing year over year over year. You know, this year is our biggest year ever. We've never done this much in revenue, and it's an amazing year. But I think it's because of the systems that we put in place and understanding. Like again, you can't have a fear of this. I don't know how to do that. Jump in there, figure it out, be vulnerable, ask questions. Talk to other business owners. Don't be afraid to say, hey, how in the world did you figure that out? And ask. So that would probably be the why, and then the E-Myth, understanding how the power of systems would be the biggest thing that I would point people to.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate that. There's a lot there.
Yeah.
Wonderful book, E-Myth, Michael Gerber. I believe the new one's called The E-Myth Revisited. Really important concept of working on the business versus in the business and everything else around that. I didn't know that book had such a profound impact in your direction, but I can see how I have a story on that for another day.
Yeah.
So this is where I'm gonna do like a quick summary of some of the things that we've talked about.
Cool.
And then after that, I'll let you share anything else that we have that I have not asked you, or anything that I have missed, so you can kind of tell us a little bit more of what's on your mind. So I think a little bit, it all started high school sports, right? And then being the point guard and recognizing that you kind of had to lead the team to the field and kind of start the play and go from there, right? Mm-hmm. Then the book, The 25 Indispensable Qualities of a Leader by Maxwell, where you said, hey, this kind of started showing me some of the principles that I need to be a better leader, but the idea of leadership was already in your mind. A lot of your style is leading by example, right? Becoming aware and then leading by example. That, shows time and time again. And you said something that I'm not asking anyone to do anything that I wouldn't do myself, or that I haven't done. The story of teaching, learning how to read to model for your kids. That's amazing. And then finding a way to love it, right? Finding a way to love it. We didn't get into it, but I'm sure there was some gamification along the way that allowed it to be fun for you, be fun for them. Big idea. Success is not a destination, and really understanding that success is in the process and enjoying the process and trusting the process and getting better through the process versus just the outcome. And learning to overcome the obstacles with the motivation of the payout, right? It's like, hey, if you just look at the obstacle that's in front of you and you just kind of have to beat your head against the wall, it's not going to take you very far. Yeah. But if you remind yourself why you're doing it, and it matters enough to you, you're going to get the energy necessary to kind of get through that learning curve, overcome the obstacle, put in the time, the energy, the effort to overcome it. Then you had a quote. I only got part of it, but at the end of the day, you said, you just have to get started. Right? It's like, you don't have to be great. You just have to get started to eventually become great. So just start taking some steps, making some action, and then it's like about the fears and not having them and having the vulnerability to say, okay, yeah, I'm not really good at that, and it doesn't matter. Yeah. And it doesn't matter where I should be. It's not where I am here, and I have these gaps, and I'm trying to close them the best possible way that I can, right? And being able to say, I don't care about what other people think. I care about getting the outcomes that I want.
Yeah, and if I could touch on that, because there's a real critical piece there.
Yeah.
Keep going, and then I'll come back to that.
Perfect. So vulnerable, asking for help will accelerate your growth. You can't be the hero of every story, and you have to have multiple winners. So if you're trying to be the hero of every story and look really good, then people actually won't support you as much. They won't like you as much. They won't help you as much. So you've got to make sure that there's other people that are the winners. And if anything, focus on your stumbles and on your learning, and you're going to get more support that way than just trying to be perfect, which is kind of like counterintuitive a little bit to culture and what we've been taught. You said titles are not leadership. Being the boss is not leadership. And leadership is ultimately about having influence over others. And it doesn't matter where you fall in the organization or the group of people. It's who has the influence. That's the real leader.
Yep.
Right.
100%.
And I'm going to connect that a little bit in just a little bit with how you do that. Leaders don't have all the answers. So it's quite the opposite. That's a misconception. And one of the ways to set this, have this influence, is to be able to cast this vision, right? Help people see what is possible and what would better look like, and how that impacts them and has an impact in their life. And then when we talked a little bit about like your coaching style, it's helping people see outside of the problem, stepping outside of their current perceptions, being able to see things from a bigger picture. And then from that bigger picture, then they can come up with some new ideas or thoughts, a new perspective that helps them make better decisions. We talked a little bit about the magazine, and ultimately you kind of share, at the end of the day, it's about educating and helping the agents get clear about who they want to be and how to get there.
Yep.
Right? Lots of education. And then the platform just serves as a stepping stone to that, but ultimately is about them, their growth, their transformation, and how they want to be positioned and perceived in the market. You mentioned Tony Robbins' Business Mastery. I've heard only great things about it, and how it had a big impact on you. You recommended, hey, go watch I Am Not Your Guru. But within the Business Mastery, the big idea that you got is like, I need a dashboard. I need a company dashboard. I need to see all my numbers. So that way I know how we're doing, what I need to change, how I need to adapt, how I need to adjust almost in real time, because I think you're updating it daily, right?
Yep.
Then you need a game plan, and you need to have your whole team aligned.
Yep.
You mentioned CRM. We need a really solid CRM system. Make sure you're building those relationships, nothing falls through the cracks. Communication and transparency as your style, right? So going back to your leadership style, communication. But I actually think it starts with your care for people, right? Because you care for people, then you want to communicate, then you want to train them, then you want them to be better. You talked a lot about, I want them to leave here better than how they got here. And I need to know what they want so I can help them get there. And it ultimately has become win-wins for you. And then that's why people love working here. They don't want to go, right? And eventually they get a great offer, and you're like, yeah, you got to take it, right? So it becomes a win-win. And then you said this big idea of get very clear on your why, and then recognize that you're going to need to build systems. So you've got the emotional side, which is what is going to help you through these challenges and obstacles. You mentioned it was really hard at the start. You were probably, overworked because you were doing every job, and you're trying to sell, and you were trying to edit and trying to print and distribute and the whole thing. And it's a lot of work. And what keeps you going is your purpose.
Yep.
And then the E-myth is the left brain, right brain, where it's like, okay, now it's about being able to build the systems, to build the leverage that allows you to continue to grow. So that's kind of like how we connect the two sides of the brain that you bring to the table to help grow and succeed. So That's about the summary. I'm sure I missed a few things, and there was a point here that you really wanted to touch more on because you thought it was important.
Yeah, I think I think what happens with most entrepreneurs is they go in and they want to immediately start the comparison journey. Dear friend of mine, he would have these deep conversations with the business partner, and the business partner was like, well, look at where Tomas is, and look at what's happened here, and I think what happens as an entrepreneur is you're going to go into it, and you're going to immediately start comparing yourself to where that business is and where this business is. But I love this one quote. It says, you don't judge your beginning by someone else's middle, right? Like, their middle is not a comparison to your beginning. Their, fourth quarter is not a comparison to your first quarter, right? It's not an apples to apples, And then you have to take into consideration, some people have a franchise. Like, my model is a franchise model. A franchise model is going to naturally, because of the E-Myth, is going to naturally be a more solid route to winning than just a grassroots start something up from scratch, because there is a game plan in place. There are business practices that are already set out. So if you're starting a business, just please understand that your only comparison needs to be within yourself and the organization. Just make sure that you're better tomorrow than you were the day before. Just make sure you're better. Just get better, and don't focus on what everybody else is doing. There was a period of time where I was constantly thinking about what other magazines were doing, and I was so focused on it that I stopped doing the very thing that made my magazine successful, which is really silly, right? It's like, wait a minute, why would I want to spend all this time thinking about other people that they're not thinking about me? They're doing what they need to do to be successful. So I need to do what I need to do to be successful. So get the comparison. It's the thief of joy. Pull that out. The sooner you pull that out, the better your company will be.
Really, really appreciate that. I only have one thing to add to that because it was brilliant, which is it's not only if you're starting a business. Sometimes you've been in business for 20 years. And, I've had this happen. They hire me and we do some things and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe. Imagine what would have happened if we did this 5 years ago or 10 years ago or 20 years ago. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. This is where we are right now for whatever reason. So, you never compare yourself to anyone and just focus on what you have to do.
Yeah.
And then another big idea there that I just want to touch on in a second is you can't, I mean, you can copy some of the tactics, but if you don't know the strategy, it might not work for you.
True.
So you're saying, hey, look, you started looking at some tactics that were not right for you because your strategy might have been different.
Yeah.
So love the big idea. Don't compare yourself to anyone. You got to know and learn and understand your own thing and do your own thing.
And that goes to, like, if there's something that you do learn, like we go to publisher conferences and there's publishers have different ideas. And so for all my publishers that are listening across all the Luxury Magazine publishers, hopefully they listen to this, is understand that there may be something that works in a market and you're like, well, I want that to work in my market. Well, you may have to massage that a little bit to make it a part of what you do. You may not be able to cookie cutter it and just go, boom, I'm just going to drop it right here and it's going to work. No, it may not work exactly the same way. You may have to put your spin on it. And that's what I think has been really good for us, is that for Luxury Magazine San Antonio and Austin, we like to put our spin on what somebody's doing so that we can make it our own. That R&D, right? What
rip off and
duplicate, yeah. Right? This R&D aspect but make sure in the duplication process that it's how you would do it. Yeah. That it follows your how, that it follows your culture. And if it doesn't, just simply trying to do it may not work. It may not, and it definitely may not work the way you want it to.
Yeah, excellent. It's having that deeper understanding, right, of what's going on around you and not just following blindly because there's somebody there. So getting into wrapping up a little bit here, where can people find you? Let's start with that.
Yeah.
Where can people find you?
So easiest way is on Instagram. I do a lot of my posts, a lot of my reels on leadership stuff, my keynote speaking, my mastermind stuff, it is at the Tomas Martinez. That's Instagram at the Tomas Martinez. You could also find me on tm3impact.com. That's the number 3, TM3 for Tomas Martinez III, impact.com.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Tomas. And to wrap up, what is something that's going to be happening here in the future that you're looking forward to?
I have a basketball game today with my son. My son is playing a game today. He's in 8th grade, and it's because I'm such a basketball massive fan. Like, I'm a massive basketball fan. It's really cool to see your son like the game that you like, right? I love basketball. I love helping him. I love his innocence of the game, of just wanting to learn the game. And I love going and practicing and shooting. Yeah, so I'm going to go watch him play his 8th grade basketball game right now.
Awesome. So really short term.
Yeah.
Something that you're excited about. Tomas, it's been amazing having you here today. Last but not least, I just want to, recognize you and thank you, because my podcast wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for you.
Oh, yeah.
I had the idea of doing something, nothing was quite right. But once you invited me to TM3, to your podcast, I thought I could do this.
Yeah.
And as you said, right, with my own style, with my own spin, with my own way, but you kind of showed me how it's done. And then we kind of recorded a test episode.
Yep.
And after that, I'm like, well, I think I need to work on this. I think I need to work on that. And you're like, no, Max, just do it.
Just do
like,
it.
No, come on, but I have to fix it, Max. just do it, right? You like to talk to people, just talk to people. So I can't thank you enough for that. We're, a little bit over a year now.
How many podcasts have you done now?
I don't have a count.
It's a lot.
Well, it's over the year. We probably have not stopped much.
Yeah.
Not fully consistent, meaning like not one every week or every other week, but probably 30 episodes or so.
Yeah.
So wouldn't have happened.
It took me 2 years to get to 30. So you did in a year what I did in about 2 years. So
and then I have to double check, because I might be completely off, and I might not have that number.
I bet you that's pretty close.
Not necessarily keeping count, but I enjoyed very much. You led me to that. You showed me the way, and then you encouraged me to stop thinking and just executing it and getting it done. And I really enjoy it, and it's been fantastic. So thank you so much, Tomas, for being my guest today, and friend and peer. So thanks so much.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me on.